We all have bad days. Some days we just feel like starting a fight, some days we feel like crying, some days we feel like not talking to anyone, and some days we just feel like destroying ourselves and our metaphysical world. Sometimes not so metaphysical. But it is the sum of all your days that dictates your path. It's not just one sideways step or even backwards. It's not just a kick that you accidentally throw. It's really about what you do with your whole life. So I want to tell you, you are not your worst day. You are allowed to have days where you don't feel like collaborating with this society, with your friends, with your family, with your partner. However, we have to ask ourselves, why do we put so much more weight on negatives than positives? We don't care about the ratio of it all. And ultimately that is the question. What is the ratio between good and evil that makes evil less relevant than the good? What has to be the perfect combination? Is it 90% good versus 10% evil? If you cross over the 10% of evil, suddenly you are evil? 11% of your life is not that much. But I would guess that most of us are not evil for 11% of our lifetimes. Let's say, for example, that you've been alive for 33 years. 33 years is exactly 12,045 days. In hours, 289,000.80 hours. So now let's imagine that out of all those hours, you've been evil for an accumulation of 1,000 hours. That's 99.7% of good. Try to make sense out of this. You've been good for 99.7% of your life, but 1,000 hours of evil acts make you evil. Hardly we can make sense out of this when we look at the numbers, but of course life is not just about numbers. It's also about the impact of that evil. So how do we measure that? What's the damage required in order to make those 1,000 hours much more relevant and much more descriptive of how good or how evil you are when compared to the other 288,000 hours? How do we make sense of this? How do we measure good and evil? Ultimately, you have to live a life where the evil is so small, so irrelevant, so insignificant, that in the end, you'll know, and those around you know, what good and evil means, because you mean good, and you are a point of reference for them. So don't become stuck in your worst day. So many of us develop this feeling of guilt, and we punish ourselves because we believe that our worst days define ourselves. They don't. Yes, often you'll have to make amends. Often you'll have to go back and fix things, correct things. But sometimes, all you have to do is forgive yourself. All you have to do is correct the path for the future. Sometimes you have to acknowledge that the past is the past, and you have to move on, become better, and become less attached to that worst day of your life. I've had a lot of bad days, but I will not accept that those bad days will define me and dictate what my future will be. Because I am what I decide to become.